Hi there, Valkyr Null from the Aetheric Forge today. I wanted to talk today a little bit more about Aetheric Forge's philosophy toward building and some of the roadmap of where we're going in terms of technology. I talked a little bit last time about the high level goals of Aetheric Forge and its community based and open source philosophy. Today, I wanted to talk a little bit more about enterprise grade architecture. I'm going to start today with disaster recovery because it's a very essential part of any architectural design. When you're thinking about resilience, you do need to consider, well, what happens if something goes really wrong? Something that's built very very well but falls over once and doesn't get back up is not exactly a useful way to go. So I've started thinking about disaster recovery from the very beginning, from when I started building my infrastructure. You'll see in the GitHub, I do have an infrastructure automation project that I'm working on that I'm going to demo in a later video. But for now, I wanted to talk about what disaster recovery is and, more importantly, what it isn't. Because a lot of people think that they're capable, and I think that if reality asked them, they would find that they're not. So first and foremost, disaster recovery is not simply backups. It's obviously you need your data. It's a prerequisite, but it's not just I have data. It's I have data as of this exact time. Here's how it got here. Here's how I know it hasn't been modified. So basically, the way you have to look at it is disaster recovery is a capability of an organization. Backups are a strategy and an artifact of that particular capability. So let's look at what are the things you actually need to be able to recover from a disaster and satisfy evidentiary requirements that we did recover to this point. So obviously, we do need the infrastructure automation I was talking about. If for whatever reason, say Azure is no longer an option, then you have to move to AWS really quickly. That switching cost is usually almost prohibitive, but if you develop your infrastructure automation, it gets a lot easier. For example, that infrastructure automation project runs both on a local workstation as a development Kubernetes cluster, and it also runs, it'll spin up an AWS EKS cluster and run it in there. The idea is, well, GitOps is GitOps, and it doesn't matter which cluster you run it in. And, and there's a lot there too. Azure and AWS have different security controls. What works in Azure may leave a hole in AWS or vice versa. What works locally might not discover any of the security issues. Well, most importantly, do you trust the restore, right? Like, can you actually say, okay, the people who came in here, they recovered using the right keys, and we're absolutely certain that the data they put back. When you do this, I would suggest that you're looking at a supervised recovery environment. You're not doing it offsite in a bunch of remote locations. You have everybody in the same room, and everybody can keep an eye on everybody. The first thing the system is going to need is it's going to need the root key material. I've designed the system so that really all you need is you need your administrator account. That's usually going to be done with with a YubiKey or something with a biometrics. And you'll also need the root CA certificate. That one goes in and it'll sign all of your internal certificates, and that's the one that you've set up all your browsers to trust. So that can be a real pain if you have to reissue it. And then last but not least, you'll need the key that you use to encrypt all the secrets. As I'll discuss later, the design here uses something called KSOPs to encrypt all the secrets in Kubernetes. So you could put a YAML file with an encrypted entry in it, and Kubernetes will create the appropriate secret. So that's it. If you have procedures and ceremonies for keeping that key material safe, for rotating it, for injecting it back into the system in case of disaster, that's your trust establishment layer, and that's if that's not there, I mean, everything can fall apart even if you do it right from a regulatory or liability perspective. Second, practice. When a disaster hits, everything happens real fast. I can tell you, I've been there. So everything's happening really fast, and you have to know what everybody is doing, and if something goes wrong, you need to know what it is you're actually trying to do. Like if an automated script fails, well, you better understand what the script is doing and what you need to do to intervene and to get it going again. I would think quarterly, maybe semi-annually is probably a good cadence here. And don't just do the exercise. You want to sit down as a team and say, okay, well, it went well, what could have done better, and iterate on your plan. I also touched a little bit on evidence and liability. If money is involved, if transactions are involved, if the potential that someone could challenge the veracity of what you restored, then you need evidence that what you restored is correct. Audit logs for when the data was transferred out to storage. Audit logs for when it came back, anything you can do to prove they're the same backups, like hashes. You definitely want to make sure that the actual procedure whereby the backups get into cold storage and out of cold storage are well and truly documented to the level that any regulatory or legal authority is going to require. And then finally, I've mentioned automation a lot. An enterprise can get really, really big. There's no way you're going to get a team with the time constraints with the size of some organizations today. And if you're looking at recovery time of objectives measured in like hours and not days or weeks, you don't have time to have humans do everything. So again, you're looking at things like infrastructure automation, you're looking at things like integration test automation, deployment automation, things like that. But you also can't hand it off to the machine and come back and say, okay, well, the machine said it's good to go, so let's go. So the things that are automated well are unit testing and smoke testing, simple integration testing. But when you have to get in and start looking at is this the correct data, does this pass a sanity check, then you're going to need a human to do that. And that's where you're going to do your exercises and your lessons learned and iterate through. And so the continuous improvement. So that's kind of the high-level plan. I'm going to go more into detail in the infrastructure automation in the next video. I'm going to run a little demo in case you think I'm case you think I'm hand-waving a bit. I will demonstrate on my own cluster that is currently running my own website that I'm confident that I can destroy it and bring it back, and that it's not going to require any intervention from me. So looking forward to talking to you again. See you soon. Bye-bye.